To really navigate the Cyber Resilience Act, we need to get comfortable with its terminology. Article 3 defines the core terms that shape the entire regulation, and these aren't just legal definitions. They directly impact you, your responsibilities, your product obligations, and what compliance looks like in practice. Let's walk through the key terms you'll keep seeing throughout the CRA. When we talk about economic operators under the CRA, we're really talking about the key players responsible for getting a product into the EU market and keeping it compliant. First, we have the manufacturer. This is the person or company that actually creates the product or has it designed and produced and markets it under their own name. They carry the primary responsibility for meeting CRA requirements. Next is the authorized representative. This is someone appointed by a manufacturer, usually when the manufacturer is outside the EU, to act on their behalf and make sure compliance tasks and documentation are handled properly. Then we have the importer, who brings products from outside the EU into the EU market. The distributor moves products through the supply chain within the EU, but without modifying them. And finally, the consumer, which refers to anyone using the product for personal, non-business purposes. These distinctions are more than labels. Each role carries specific duties under the CRA, so understanding who is essential for compliance. Two key terms tell us exactly when CRA obligations begin. Placing on the market is the first moment a product becomes available in the EU. This is the compliance starting line. Making available on the market covers everything that happens after that: sales, distribution, even free supply if it's part of a commercial activity. This distinction matters because it tells you who is responsible and at what moment. If you're unsure where your company fits, this is one of the first definitions to clarify. The CRA doesn't just look at what a product is meant to do, it looks at how people will actually use it. The intended purpose is whatever the manufacturer states. Reasonably foreseeable use includes how people typically use the product in real life. And reasonably foreseeable misuse covers predictable mistakes, like using default passwords or plugging something in wrong. Manufacturers must account for all three when assessing risk. If you design products, this is where the CRA expects you to think beyond the user manual and consider real-world behavior. One of the most impactful CRA definitions is the support period. This is how long the manufacturer must fix vulnerabilities and provide security updates, and it must be clearly communicated. In other words, users shouldn't have to guess how long their device will stay protected. Support is now a legal requirement, not a nice-to-have. If you're a manufacturer, this becomes a key part of your compliance plan. When it comes to proving compliance, the CRA introduces several important terms. A conformity assessment is the process of showing your product meets CRA requirements. A conformity assessment body evaluates whether you've met those requirements. A notified body is a specially designated entity approved by an EU member state. And once you meet all requirements, the CE marking is your declaration to the market. This product complies with the CRA and all relevant EU laws. These definitions are the backbone of the CRA's certification and market entry system. These definitions are not just legal language, they're the framework for the entire regulation. They determine who has obligations, when obligations start, how long products must be supported, what processes manufacturers must follow, and how CE marking is achieved. If you understand these terms, the rest of the CRA becomes much easier to follow. You now have the vocabulary that underpins every obligation in the Act.